Scuba Obsessed, the weekly podcast. We talk about all things scuba diving, from cool new gear, to places to dive, and scuba news. Scuba Obsessed, episode 506 is recorded live Thursday, August 19th, 2021. Welcome back to Scuba Obsessed. I'm Darrin Gilson, coming to you from the southwest side of the great state of Michigan, where it is fair time of year. Joining me this week, we have Mac. No, we don't have Mac.
No, we don't have Mac. Mac's taking a break this week.
Yeah, we've got Jim Scholz. How are we doing today, Jim?
I am doing great, Darrin. Thanks for having me on again.
You're welcome. Glad to have you back on. It's been a while.
It has been too long.
Yep. So Jim is joining me down in the dive bunker. We had a little bit of a rough start tonight, but we're going to come back from that. We have some diving to talk about. So, Jim, what kind of diving did you get this last week?
Well,
or a couple weeks, I guess.
2 weeks ago, we got a chance to spend 10 days up in the Straits of Mackinac. Aaron Mann and I took our boats up and ended up on docks side by side, camped on our boats at the Straits Harbor, which is a beautiful harbor, fairly new, run by the DNR. It cost us maybe $35 to $40 a night to anchor our boats right there, or dock our boats right there in the harbor with electric and water, use of the shower facilities and everything there in the harbor. And it was just nice to kind of camp out on the boat and get rocked to sleep by the gentle waves.
That was always nice. I've always wanted to do some camping out in a boat, but haven't had an opportunity to do so. So what kind of interesting things did you get to do? What was some good dives?
Well, we hit the places. We went to the Cedarville, the Sandusky, the Minneapolis, Barnum, Heber Ward, Young, and then we had a new dive location that we found that we'll talk about a little later on in the show. Kind of a teaser. It was not a shipwreck. I'll tell you right now, it's not a shipwreck, but it is a very interesting dive location in 45 feet of water that is new information to the state, new information for the preserves. So they were happy with our find.
So what kind of, what do we want to cover first?
Well,
you've got some clips here.
Yeah, I brought some clips. One of the things I was doing up there is playing around with my side scan sonar. Pretty easy when there's a buoy on the surface that shows you where the wreck is. But a lot of people have never really seen what the side scan looks like when it's running. So I was able to take some video clips of this actual side scan system. So why don't we play that first clip and we'll talk over it. Let me give you views. On the right, you're getting your waterfall view of the actual side scan. Left side, right side, and that dark area down the center is the nadir, which is dead underneath the boat. And there is a shipwreck coming by on the right-hand side. The left window shows you the bottom contour, and then below that is the direction of the boat. And that also has the depth color-coded in there. So again, there's the shipwreck on the right-hand side. We made a couple of passes with it just to see what it is. Unfortunately, the full screen is not showing to show you how wide this swath was, but I think it was shooting about 240 feet each side of the boat. And then this is a crossover where we actually went over top of the boat. You can see that in the bottom view. So that was, I believe, the Sandusky. And the Sandusky is one of, I believe it's actually the oldest wreck in the Straits of Mackinac. It was a schooner built in 1848, Sandusky, Ohio, and it went down in 1856. The depth of it is 70 feet to the deck and about 84 to the sand, so it's a very easy dive to do, just outside of basic beginner. What's so interesting about the Sandusky is it still has the bowsprit on it, and the Sandusky has a figurehead underneath the bowsprit, which is extremely unusual. These schooners were the workhorses of the day, and most boat owners would not spend the extra money to put a fancy carved figurehead underneath. If you go to the Straits of Mackinac underwater preserve pages, you'll find some fantastic photos and a great history of the Sandusky. That figurehead is one of the most photographed items of a shipwreck that you'll find in the Straits of Mackinac or in Michigan shipwrecks. Looking at the side scan, if we want to put that back up, Darrin, you'll notice the bowsprit here just sticking out on it. In one of the views, we hit it pretty well, and it's just this long point of shadow sticking off the end of the wreck.
Got it right there?
There it is on the top. Stop. Yep. So that last piece of shadow there on the front is the bowsprit sticking out off the wreck.
So that's kind of here in this like little right side there. Is that what?
Yep, that's it on the right side at the very, very top of the shipwreck there that you're seeing on the right. So that shows a little bit of the bowsprit just hanging off there.
And then in this lower left side of the screen, that's kind of showing your track.
The track and the position of the boat. Yes.
Track the position.
Yep.
So the more times you go back, the better image that you could end up building up?
You can. There are some programs that will take multiple passes and piece it together to do overlays and make better images. And that's how they're making the 3D images now, with multiple passes of high resolution sonar.
Okay.
So that's the first one we looked at. From there, we went over and dove the Cedarville. And I think we've got some video on the Cedarville.
There it's coming.
Yeah. Where you've got the Sandusky as the oldest, or one of the oldest shipwrecks in the Straits. You got the Cedarville as one of the newest. Cedarville is a steel ore carrier that went down in 1965, so roughly 100 years after the Sandusky. Cedarville was built in 1927, and you can dive it anywhere from 40 feet to about 110 feet at the sand. It was carrying limestone, and it's really interesting because it's broken in half now. The stern section lies at about a 45-degree angle, tipped over, and the bow section is almost completely upside down. So I think on this pass, yeah, there you can see the break just came through, and you've got, two different angles there that clearly show up on that wreck. Cedarville is just east of the bridge, about 3 to 4 miles, I believe. Went down because of a collision in fog. Mistake was made. 2 boats collided. Cedarville started to heel over and rolled. There you can see the definite difference between the break, where it goes from one angle to another angle. So that's a fun wreck. It's moored at the bow, at the stern, and at the break. You've got 3 different mooring points on it there. So a lot of times people will, moor the bow, hook onto the bow, and swim to the break, turn around and come back, and then they'll go to the stern and swim to the break, turn around and come back. One of the fun things to do if you're an experienced diver and have the gear with you and the confidence, you can actually swim underneath the shipwreck. The self-unloading mechanism is mounted to the bow. And as the bow rolled over, it's kind of laying on this self-loading mechanism. So if you swim under the derrick, you can actually swim completely under the ship and come up on the other side down by the hull. What I like to do is go in from the deck side, swim underneath it when I get around the hull, then swim along the edge of the hull to the bow, where you can see the upside down pilot house, come on back around and come back up. And that in itself is a good dive at about 110. Do it if you can stay out of deco if you keep moving and don't spend too much time on the bottom. But Cedarville's a great wreck to see. Coming in and out through those holds is fantastic. Just, huge shadows and great photo opportunities. So, again, I'll refer you to the Straits of Mackinac Underwater Preserve page for more information about the Cedarville. Some excellent photos there and a wonderful history. We heard an interesting story while we were up there. Dan Friedhoff, his father was on the Cedarville when it collided. Dan and his mother had breakfast with their father in the morning. He left, got on the ship, left port, we're heading through the straits, got into the fog, had the collision. His father was in the stateroom, his stateroom at the time of collision. As the ship rolled, he ended up getting thrown, and I believe he broke his leg, got into the water, and was rescued by the other ship involved in the collision. Dan's father recently passed, and Dan had his ashes, or Dan put his ashes back into his stateroom on the Cedarville so he could rest in peace with his shipmates from that shipwreck. So if you get up to the Straits, ask Dan Friedhoff about that story. Great story. So that was the Cedarville.
I was going to say, what's the next one we want to take a look at?
Oh, what we got on the list here?
I think we got Young.
The Young? Yeah, let's take a look at the Young. Now, Cedarville is the Sandusky's on the Michigan side, Cedarville's on the Lake Huron side, and not far from the Cedarville is the Young. Now, Young is in a portion of the straits that really has strong currents, and you've got to catch a good day to get on the Young. We happened to catch it in a day when the wind was shifting, and so we had a very flat, calm water. You could actually see flies on the water that day. It was so calm. But below the surface, there was still a pretty strong current running on the Young. Came down the center. What you just saw was the stern cabin area. The Young is, I think, the only ship in the Straits that still has the wheel on it. So this is one you definitely want to do the mooring on. You don't want to try to drop an anchor on it. Behind the Young, there's a line that leads out into the clay on the bottom. And this is very interesting. I wasn't quite sure what the pieces were back there with them being covered in zebra mussels. You couldn't quite clean them up to see them. But The young has some really strange clay behind it. You'll see a big V coming up here in a few minutes of just clay mounds with a valley in the middle. There you can start to see it. And then just beyond those mounds, the bottom drops down another 30-40 feet. So the young could have been in a lot deeper water had it been 100 feet one way or the other. The other thing that was odd is these clay right around there looks like mini mountains, volcanoes. It all pops up and there's small holes in the center of it, and it's just a very unusual thing to see.
Well, and when you say that, it's like the clay. There's like an opening in the middle of it then?
There's like an opening in the middle of the clay, yeah. It's just this field of small, very small mounds, maybe, 6 inches high, but they all seem to have holes in the middle. Can't explain why, other than it's just the sand and the clay have mixed and washed out, and what's left is this very tacky type of clay like you would find for throwing pots or modeling clay. Coming back to the ship, you're going to have a nice view of the rudder here, and then we're going to go up over the stern, over the fantail. Big towing davit there. The box you see, that frame, is where the deck house or the cabin would have been. And on most of these older schooners, the cabins were not attached strongly to the hull of the ship or the deck of the ship. They were designed to float free if the ship ever sunk, to give the crews something to hang on to or climb up on top of. They could get on top of the deck house and use it as a life raft till they could get rescued. The young is full of coal. You can just see the big pieces in there. That's where the mooring line comes down. Coming up on the center hold area.
Had you dove this one before?
I believe I'd been on it once before, but I didn't get a really good chance to video. Here's some dead eyes on the rail, right there on the left side. Bilge pump. Right amidship.
So I was noticing certain parts of the wreck are... Well, there's another dead eye. A little bit in...
There's a great shot of a dead eye right there, just leaving the screen.
It's like the deck's not completely covered with mussels.
No, it comes and goes, and that's what's strange. I don't know why. Part of it is sand, part of it is wood, but a lot of the wrecks are that way. It could be on this one, but it could be because of the current, because there normally is a fairly strong current on here. In fact, you can see some of the silt in the water just floating by as we stir it up and drop in.
There's some spots you can see the mussels are.
Quick view inside the hold, and if you look to the bow, we're looking to the bow area, you can see right through where it's been, bow is damaged, and though I wouldn't try to do a swim through it, there is enough open light that you can see through from the hold, through the bow and out of the ship. Great wreck. Again, depth is not too bad on it. You've just got to make sure you catch it when the current will allow you to. I should have edited this piece of it out. You might want to stop it here, Darren, because we get my brass clip that I hold everything on shifted, and it just came. Yeah, the rest of the video has this brass clip in the middle of the screen. Like I said, this is unedited video, so we're just showing you the raw footage.
Okay. there's some nice, nice collection of dead eyes.
Yeah, there's, standing dead eyes and rigging dead eyes. The standing dead eyes would come up off the side of the ship, and then the running rigging dead eyes would come down off the top of the mast and be on the end of the line, and then they would hook, tie the two of them together, and that's how they would tension the mast. So ship's wheel, again, fun wreck. A lot of people don't get to see it, but an interesting. I'd love to clean those pieces off and see what they are.
Okay, so what's the next one we want to take a look at?
Oh, let's see. I think the next one might be a side scan. Is that the... Yeah, okay. Nope, this is an interesting one. As we were coming back from the Cedarville, we got a blip on the sonar, the down imaging. Had no idea what it was. So we just marked it, came back around and hit the blip again at the same time. So that says, well, it's not a fish. So we threw the anchor out. One of our divers still had their gear on, so they dropped in, slammed down, and took a look around and saw this sticking up out of the sand. Looked like a phone pole, basically. So we took some photos of it. We went back and looked at it that night, kind of imagined what it could be, and then went back the following day. Decided we'd clean some of the zebra mussels off of it. And if you haven't figured out yet, you probably will pretty soon. What you're looking at is a 12-foot long woodstock anchor. That tall pole standing up and down is the woodstock piece of the anchor. And that piece coming off of it to the left would be where the flukes would go, and the flukes are buried in the sand. Somebody did a little looking to see if they could find the flukes. This is a pile of cable that's wrapped around it, and this big pile. It took us a while to figure out what this was. And what we believe is this anchor was there, and then it got snagged by a cable. Because if you look coming up here, you're going to see the broken end, one end of this cable just broken straight apart. And in just a couple of seconds, you're going to see the other end of the cable where it's hooked around the anchor itself. There's the end that's broken. And it looks like this cable snagged the anchor and then broke in two places, or broke and got wrapped around the anchor, sprung back, because it all looks like a wound up spring. So if the cable were stretched and then came back and snapped it, it came together like a spring. That large ring in the center is where the anchor chain would be attached. There was no anchor chain on it. And it's got the metal bands above and below to help hold the wood together and secure the whole assembly. When we measured the circumference of the wood, it was like 39 inches. So it's a rather large diameter. We took the GPS numbers and sent it to the state, gave it to Wayne Lasardi, the state archaeologist, with the photographs we had taken, and also gave it to Dan. And neither of them were familiar with this or had any indication that it had been reported before. So it's a new find to be added to the inventory list in the Straits of Mackinac, and we're kind of announcing the find of this anchor podcast.
So this type of anchor would have normally had a chain on it.
Right. It would have normally had a chain on this ring up here. There you go, right there in that middle. There's the ring. We've got the yellow line tied around it. And we just had a jug floating off the yellow line to help us identify it as we were working on it, going back to it, cleaning it up a little bit for about 3 or 4 days while we were up there. Amazing. This was 45 feet of water just east of the harbors in Mackinac City. We've got a couple of ideas on it. One is that it was a ship was trying to get in protection. So they came around the Mackinac Point, went into Lake Huron, and then anchored in the lee of Mackinac City to try to get out of a storm, and possibly broke free of the anchor and drifted away. Another possibility is that at some point this anchor was found someplace else, was being salvaged, and they brought it back here and they just dropped it in this 45-foot bay area to mark it, you know, wait until they got ready to get it on shore, salvage it, find a use for it, put it on another ship, whatever. And for some reason they never got back to it. So we put all the information over to the state and the Underwater Preserve, and they're going to do some research on it. We'll keep checking back, and probably every year we go up, we'll keep cleaning zebra mussels off, take photos and watch it from year to year to see if it becomes a needed to be removed for preservation purposes, or if it's better leaving it right here where it's at to be preserved. Assuming it's been sitting here since mid-1800s, maybe as late as 1900, it's in pretty good shape for 200 years underwater.
It's interesting how the cable just happens to be right there by it.
Yes.
Because it almost seems like they're from two different times.
Yeah. One of the thoughts we had was to take a sample of the cable and get the cable analyzed to determine, you know, how old the cable is. I talked with some local net fishermen who were fishing in this area, asked them if they'd ever lost a net over here or, you know, snagged anything. And they said no, they hadn't, but, you know, it's hard to say. That cable could have been there for 100 years or more. So it's up to the state now. We'll just keep visiting it from year to year and cleaning it off and keeping an eye on it.
Very cool. It's always nice when you can get a new discovery like this.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a shipwreck, but it's a historical piece that has been reported before, and so we're calling it Jim's Anchor since I found it.
So this could be one of those things that it answers a question for another wreck.
Possibly. You know, what happened to the anchor of the boat that was anchored here and, you know, drifted, ended up on the shore or ended up being wrecked, but doesn't have an anchor on it. So that's another option of, you know, starting to measure this up and take a look. There's an anchor, I believe, in St. Ignace that was measured and pointed out to us. It might be the match to this one, or very, very similar. So we're gonna have to get up, take some measurements, and just keep digging. That's one of these things, you just keep digging and come up with possibilities, and maybe someday you get some answers. But for now, it's all conjecture as to where it came from and what it's doing here, but it's definitely there.
Karen in the chat room had something. She said 119 feet on the Young, and then 122 feet on the Minneapolis.
I think that one clip that we thought was the Sandusky, I don't think that was the Sandusky. I think we misidentified that one. That sonar clip. So I'll have to go back and look, because it didn't really, I know when we looked at the sonar, it really showed the bow. And what do we got for depth on this wreck?
That's showing 75 feet.
Is it 75, 55, 65? Let's see on that screen better. Yes, that's about 60 feet. So I'm not sure that that's the Sandusky.
No,
I'll have to go back and look at the GPS numbers because the GPS numbers will tell you exactly what wreck it is. But it was interesting just looking at the bottom profiles, how the bottom changes by, you know, 10, 15 feet right there around the wrecks. It's, I don't know if it's sand building up because the wreck is blocking the current, or if it was just, that's the way it was when the wreck went down. A lot of times.
Yeah, Karen said she had 80 feet for the Sandusky.
Yeah, that seems about right.
Okay.
So that could be, but I thought we had a better image of the Sandusky. I'll have to go through my other files and send it to you.
We may have something. Let me take a look. Let's throw that anchor back on while I go look for it. I think I had another folder.
Mine, it would have been snapshots. There you go. Hopefully we don't crash the system as we try to add another image in here to production file to show you. In the meantime, again, this anchor's in 45 feet of water. So it's a good place to just stop and finish off the rest of the tank and clean it off a little bit.
Sandusky, is that the one we wanted to see?
Yeah. Yep. You got it now. All right, we're going to shift gears back, and okay, there's the Sandusky. That's a much better snapshot image of the Sandusky, and you can really see that bowsprit shadow coming out of here. When I'm running the bird, I've got a couple of options. One is to record everything that you see on the Hummingbird. I like to do because then I can play it back through a number of different filters and search things out in more detail. Anytime I'm doing any recovery work or looking for missing persons, that's the tool we use. The second tool is a snapshot view where you can just get a quick screenshot of your sonar screens, and it just saves it as a snapshot. So you can see where we had passed right over top of it. That was on the left, and then on the right is the shadow image from the side scan of as we went across it. You can just, I love the way you can just show that shadow of how that ship was just sitting there with a long bowsprit sticking out.
Here's one called the Maitland.
Ah, okay. Maitland's another one up there that we hit. I don't remember the story of the Maitland. There might be a Minneapolis on here too, Darrin. The Minneapolis is the one that's like right next to the south tower of the Mackinac Bridge. It was hard to believe they actually built the Mackinac Bridge with this ship so close to it, but never knew it was there until they were looking for a car that actually had gotten blown off the bridge a few years ago. 60 feet, 60, that's not the Maitland, but whatever that one is has a nice big, we didn't show it yet.
No.
Okay.
One.
Yeah, that could be. 89 feet. And we're going to put another one up here. There's another side scan image.
It said northwest on the...
Yep. Okay, that would be the northwest then. That's out there in the Lake Michigan side, close to the Eber Ward, the Stalker, the Maitland. They're all fairly close out there on the Michigan side. And you can see the beautiful old opening just showing up, dark shadow right there in the middle of the boat. So if you haven't seen or explored side scan images, this is what you want to look for when you're out there running side scan or down scan. If you see something on the bottom that looks unusual or stands out, mark it. Go back and look at it and see if it's there the following day or the following week. You know, sometimes you'll mark schools of fish and they'll be gone in a matter of hours or days. But if you keep going back and it's still there, it's probably something man-made that's worth dropping and diving on. The GPS numbers are on these, so if you want to go into the Straits Preserves page, you can match up the GPS numbers, and this will give you some idea of what these wrecks look like from a side scan perspective. It's always nice when there's buoys on the surface to tell you where to scan.
And then we've got another one, it's the Eber Ward.
Eber Ward. This is probably my favorite wreck in the Straits of Mackinac. Eber Ward is a wooden steamship that got caught in the ice and it crushed a hole on both sides of the bow in the ice. If you wish I had video on this one. It's a fantastic wreck for penetration if you've got the experience and the equipment. It's about 145 to the sand, but you can hit the wreck at about 110 on the upper deck. And there's a lot to see. On the deck, there's a bathtub. There's a toilet that fell out of the cabin house as the cabin lifted off, the wheelhouse, or the cabin, yeah. The Ward was a steamer. So in the back, you had the engines and the boiler. They're still there. It has 3 decks on it. The main deck, a lower deck, and then a 3rd deck down towards the bottom. If you go over the bow, and the bow of the Eber Ward's unique in that it's got a huge mushroom anchor on it, which you usually don't see mushroom anchors. Plus it has a woodstock on it. And then there's a 3rd anchor laying on the deck with a small crane, hook-shaped crane above it for maneuvering it. If you go over the bow and drop down on the port side, there's a bathtub sitting in the sand on the port side. But you can make penetration through the ice hole, which takes you down to the 3rd deck. You can swim around the forepeak area. There's some tools and a wheelbarrow and some other equipment there. You can swim down that deck till you hit the rear bulkhead. You go up a level, and that will let you swim around the boilers. And then as you go further to the stern of the boat, around the engine itself, you can back up the other side, go up another half deck, and you come out on the 2nd deck, which is huge, wide open. Swim to the bow on that, pop up through one of the hatchways, and finish off your dive swimming either bow to stern, or usually I'll go bow to stern on the deck itself, and then come up another 20 or 30 feet and just do a flyover. So you make 4 passes back and forth. Depending how quickly you swim, it gets you close to the deco level. But you can see this wreck and great photos of it, 20, 30 feet above it, because it's known for incredible clarity. And it's a beautiful wreck. Still pretty much intact. Lots of things to see on it. It's like, interior is like going inside a barn. It's just all this wood and these beams, and it's like being in the hayloft of a barn, just swimming through it. It is my favorite wreck in the Straits of Mackinac. And I'm going to say my 2nd favorite is probably the Young. only because of what's there and what's on it.
Well, that one says, it says Max Barge.
Max Barge. Yep, that's a local one.
Okay.
Yeah, we got to check that one out and see what it is. It's marked as Max Barge, but I'm not quite sure. We're gonna have to check the numbers on that one.
Yeah, I didn't share that one.
Yeah.
So let's.
We're looking at some stuff behind the scenes here to see what else we can show you.
We had some video from Karen. I haven't gone through it, so
Oh,
that might be.
put it up.
Put it up.
Put it up. Karen, can we put your video up?
Yeah, you sent it, so let's go ahead. I'm gonna.
We're gonna tell you that we'll edit all this dead time out of the final show, but chances are it's still gonna be there, or at least some of it. See if we can identify this one as we watch it. Oh, I believe this is the Cedarville.
See that? Karen's asking what the date was on it.
That looks like the Cedarville. That, I believe, is the Young.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, the date files on these are 2015, so I don't think that's when you went.
Probably an earlier trip to the Cedarville.
Let's, that's, Mac gives it a different date on one screen versus the other. So let's go and try this one. Yeah, I'd probably Cedarville too.
A lot of zebras on it, so yeah, I'm gonna say that's Cedarville.
Been down in some hole.
Yeah. I believe the only steel ship we dove up there, if it's from the Straits, was the Cedarville. But as we look around and see what else is on it.
This is is the Minneapolis of the Young. That's a clear video.
There it is. Eagle Ward.
Eagle Ward.
This is the Eagle Ward. There's the toilet. You're working your way towards the bow of the Eagle Ward. That's where the mast was. The forward hold. All the pipes and plumbing inside it. I believe this is headed towards the stern. I'll have to get a better view, but I think the toilet is up in the bow. Yeah, she's headed towards the stern now. Here's a beautiful wreck. I don't know if we'll see it here, but yeah, here you can see the second level, and then that third level right there through the pipes. You can see the second and down to the third level of the hold. Lots of places to make penetration, places to pop up. Great video opportunity if you're working with someone, because you can get somebody to, you know, be swimming through that bottom level of the hold and you're up above on the main deck, and get a picture of people 2 levels below you.
$116 max depth.
Yeah, I think it's... I want to say it's about 145 to the sand. But there's really no reason to go to the sand unless you're just doing it for, you know, different angles for video.
Some nice viz too.
Yeah. There's the stack and where the rear, so the burner stack, blue, you could call it. You're going to come up and right behind that are your boilers. And then here's the engines. I believe it was a triple expand steam engine. Very long steamer to not have hogging arches on it. One of the problems they had with steamers is as they continued to get longer and longer, they would start and bending in the middle. So the later steamers, they put those long hogging arches that kind of look like bridge supports through the middle of the ship to give them more stability. Here you're seeing the rear. That's the auxiliary steering of you. And then to the right of that is a capstan. Okay, this is the engine room from the stern. You can make a, you can swim all the way through that and around that engine like a horseshoe.
Nice view of the capstan there.
Yep. Capstan and the auxiliary steering. Aaron checking her depth and time. Trying to stay out of deco. This is one you could very quickly get deco because there's so much of the wreck to see, and at a depth that you don't watch your time, you could get in trouble.
It looks like she's heading up now.
Yeah. And what's nice is there's two lines on this one. There's one on the bow, one on the stern. So you could have two boats on here at the same time, or you could, you know, if you get into trouble, you can always swim on your angle back up towards the mooring lines. And even 30, 40 feet above the wreck, you can still get a great view of the wreck. And a view from Karen's boat. Looking at that, it looks like this may be the Cedarville. And buoy, I think, is the Cedarville buoy. Relatively flat day out there. And that's a view of the inside of the camera case. Let's see what we got here.
Give me a quick one. Yeah, my computer started yelling at me. I had to swim for it at the end. Thankfully, the camera didn't pick up her saying what she was thinking.
This may be Sheboygan. Ah, Sandusky. You can tell by the bowsprit.
Nice close-up of a dead eye. Heavily encrusted.
And there you can start to see the ram's head figurehead on the Sandusky. That's actually a replacement The original was stolen. I'm sorry. The original was removed. One story goes that the person who removed it wanted to preserve it so it didn't get lost or damaged. It eventually was returned to the state. They've got it in one of the museums. It's been preserved. And this is a replacement that was put there in its place to represent and keep the true integrity of the shipwreck. But it's one of the most photographed artifacts in the shipwrecks in the preserves. Okay, this is a shallower wreck because of the growth on it. The one thing I did notice this year, we're starting to get more angel hair growing on the wrecks. Something we haven't had in the past.
I mean, sunlight's getting down a little better, or?
Yeah, I'm used to seeing angel hair on the ocean shipwrecks, but I just starting to see it. I noticed it when we were in the Straits up there on this trip, that there was more and more wrecks were starting to get some angel hair on them.
Oh, that's going to be a mana dive.
That's her nighttime manor dive in Hawaii.
What's the plan for next year on going up? You gonna do the same route again, or?
I haven't really decided. I mean, there's always lots of wrecks and straits to look at, but you know, you kind of get tired of seeing the same wrecks year after year after year.
Yeah.
So we used to go to Alpena, and then we moved to Sheboygan, and there's still plenty of straits of Mackinac because there's more wrecks up there that aren't marked buoyed. So, you know, there's some wrecks over around Beaver Island and the Manitous. So maybe it's time to shift around and go over there a little bit. We'll just have to check it out. There's also more wrecks over on the east side. Near there's quite a few. So we'll have to figure out what we want to do. I'd love... it's getting late. Trying to think of the name of the wreck. Windy 8. I would love to get on the Windy 8 sometime and go back and see the Barney out of the Barney's out of Roger City. So
White Point area.
Whitefish is another option. Go up and spend a week or so at Whitefish.
Also up there in Canada. What's that?
Tobermory.
Tobermory.
Yeah, and there's also the in Superior Isle Royale.
Isle Royal. Yeah. That'd be a nice one. Then.
Yeah. I know the club went to Isle Royal many years ago, probably 30 years ago. I don't think any of us have really been back since then.
No, I know there's still diving going on, obviously, up there, but I don't think anything from the club. Well, I think that should about do it for this week.
You have a bad scuba joke?
I don't have any scuba joke.
Oh, no bad scuba joke?
No, not this week.
Oh.
No.
Wow.
Yeah.
I guess you'll just have to tune in next week for 2.
Yeah, we'll double up.
There's the name of it. Perseverance is a wreck that I want to get to over in Sheboygan. Perseverance. That's one that was found. That is the scavenger hunt wreck.
Mm-hmm.
All the pieces are there, but they're all spread out.
Okay.
So it's like a scavenger hunt.
Oh. Yeah, Karen's got the joke for us this week.
Oh, okay, good.
So she says, how do you make an octopus laugh? You give him tentacles.
Tickles.
Yes. I think that counts.
Okay. That counts.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Jim. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And we'll catch you next week. So until next time, go out there and get wet.
Be safe. And remember, no shipwrecks were harmed in the making of tonight's program.